Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to AAUW's member gathering. We're so pleased that you've joined us today to reflect on our accomplishments for this past year, as well as taking a look ahead to the work that lies before us in the new fiscal year. Before we officially get started, I'd like to launch a quick poll to learn a bit more about the members who've joined us on Zoom today. Last week marked the official start of summer. So what are you most looking forward to this summer? And your choices are travel, vacation, time outdoors, enjoying hobbies, or visiting family. Once we have a good group who've submitted their answers, we'll close the poll and share the results with you. It looks pretty close between visiting family and vacation and travel. Vacation and travel edged out by just a smidge. Thank you for everyone for sharing your plans with us. As the chair of AAUW's board of directors for the past 6 years, it's been an honor to lead the board in such a distinguished and impactful organization with such a deep history of research, education, programs, and advocacy. AAUW continues to be a leader in advancing gender equity for women and girls. And I thank you and our board of directors for your contributions to our important mission and work. These gatherings provide a special opportunity not only to share updates from the national office, but also to thank all those who make our work possible through your tireless efforts in fundraising, activism, and programs. Later in today's program, Katrina Breeze, our National Senior Director of Institutional Advancement, will provide an update and acknowledgement of our dedicated donors that support AAUW's mission through funding today and into the future. But first, I would like to thank one group in particular. So here's a special message of gratitude to our champions for women and girls. Those are donors who have provided cumulative donations to AAUW totaling $5,000 or more. These donors represent the highest level of total individual giving to AAUW National in FY23. We deeply appreciate your ongoing efforts and commitment to AAUW. During today's event, you will hear about some of the many accomplishments we are able to commit to. During today's event, you'll hear about some of the many accomplishments we're able to realize despite another challenging year faced by AAUW and nonprofit organizations across our country. As we continue to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, I salute your resiliency and that of the national staff during these past few very trying years, and all of your unrelenting efforts to move the organization's mission and work forward. Now I'd like to introduce AAUW's National CEO, Gloria L. Blackwell, to share a few key updates. Take it away, Gloria.
Thank you so much, Julia, and good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to address this special gathering of members along with my colleagues from AAUW National and you and Melinda. It's always energizing to be reminded of all of the incredible women that make AAUW's work possible. I appreciate those of you who invited me to be a part of your state conventions this spring, because without members like you, our mission of advancing gender equity through research, advocacy, and education for over 140 years would not exist. You help fund the efforts making a difference to women and girls. You are the ones who bring our work to your communities through your own fundraising and outreach, and you spread the word far and wide about the ongoing importance of AAUW's mission. As I've met and heard from members throughout this past year, I've heard and really felt the challenges you've experienced throughout the pandemic and beyond, whether it's challenges which have made it more difficult to connect with one another or adapting to new systems and practices. But I am encouraged by the progress we've made. And we continue to make as we progress and demonstrate our ability to be adaptive and resilient. And we should all be proud of how AAUW's efforts have been driving social progress for more than 140 years and the need to embrace change along the way. And it's something that AAUW needs to continue to embrace even more as we prepare the organization for the future, because the future is now. Well before the pandemic, AAUW was coming to terms with a new organizational reality and the challenges faced by so many nonprofits and membership organizations. And that's why the AAUW Board of Directors and national staff have been engaged in an intentional and complex process of deep planning to ensure the sustainability of AAUW and its impact well into the future. Throughout my years at AAUW, I've had the privilege of witnessing and being a part of so many historic moments nationally and even globally. This year, I was honored to represent AAUW at several White House events, the 30th anniversary of the Family and Medical Leave Act, the Women's History Celebration Month in March, and most recently, attending the White House's first Juneteenth celebration since it became a federal holiday 3 years ago. I was thrilled to attend with my AAUW special guest, our phenomenal colleague, Angela Cooper. Angie has provided service to AAUW for nearly 30 years, and we thank her for her deep knowledge and commitment. This spectacular event was a true celebration of Black excellence, from historically Black colleges and university bands battling it out to Tony winner Audra McDonald, the Fisk University Jubilee Singers, and a performance by Step Africa. Invitations to events like these and requests to provide expertise as a thought leader or panelist demonstrate that AAUW continues to be an esteemed and valued organization, and our research, advocacy, and programs remain in demand for national and international coverage. Here are just a few places where we've received media coverage this year, from the Washington Post to MSNBC and USA Today. And just yesterday, I was interviewed by Time Magazine. And along with increased visibility, our advancement team continues efforts to diversify our funding. Here are our organizational supporters who sponsored AAUW's programs this past fiscal year. As Julia noted earlier, along with these funders, you all make our work possible. So that's why I'm going to take just a few minutes to highlight a few accomplishments, because it's so important to be intentional about leveraging AAUW's successes to grow our impact on our journey towards equity for all. For example, this past Monday, I was excited to speak on a virtual panel hosted by AAUW featuring Senator Elizabeth Warren and other distinguished movement leaders to discuss the impact of student debt on women and families. We discussed the ongoing Supreme Court cases and the next steps we all must take to secure student debt relief and improve women's economic security. And the AAUW is doing its part to reduce student debt. This year, AAUW awarded the highest amount ever in fellowships and grants, $6.3 million to 285 scholars and community-based programs for girls, thanks to your generous support since 1888, when the first AAUW American Fellowship was awarded. And this week, we were pleased to host a group of fellows, alumni, and selection panelists at the national office. And speaking of AAUW fellows and grantees, next month, AAUW Fellowship alumna Dr. Claudine Gay will become the first Black woman or person of color to lead Harvard University. In fact, the majority of America's top-ranked colleges will be led by a woman or person of color this fall. Women, especially Black women, have been earning more degrees and elevating their credentials, so progress towards making it to the top is long overdue. I sent President-elect Gay a congratulatory letter, and this was part of her response. Quote, I will always be grateful for the AAUW Fellowship and the work it enabled me to pursue. The work AAUW does to advocate for gender equity and equal educational opportunity is so critical, and I hope you will consider me a partner in that work, end quote. In addition to rolling out a newly impressive group of fellowships and grants recipients, our national programs continue to bring value to participants across the country and across the globe. This includes our economic security work with historically Black colleges and minority-serving institutions, launching year 3 of AAUW STEM Ed for Girls, our high school program for girls and their caregivers, our national conference for college women student leaders, featuring our keynote speaker, Minda Hart. Just a few weeks ago, we held our 38th annual Nick Whistle event at the University of Maryland at College Park in person for the first time since 2019. And we were thrilled to welcome nearly 450 student leaders from over 170 campuses nationwide. There's nothing more energizing than a room full of young leaders ready to learn, connect, and be inspired. The Women of Distinction Awards ceremony is a key highlight, generously sponsored by AAUW Maryland for more than a decade, and we really appreciate their support. I'd like to extend a special thank you to all of the individual states and branches who supported Nick Whistle students through scholarship support. Without it, we know that many of our attendees would not have had the financial means to join us for this transformative experience. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your support, your commitment, your dedication, which are critical to ensuring AAUW's vitality and impact for years to come. AAUW members, advocates, alumni, and supporters are the inspiration behind every AAUW national program, research report, or advocacy push. We could not do it without you. Thank you. And speaking of advocacy, now I'd like to introduce one of our newest senior team members, Megan Cassell. I was so excited to have Megan join AAUW earlier this year as our new Senior Director of Policy and Member Advocacy. In her role, Megan leads AAUW's nonpartisan and mission-driven public policy at the federal level and supports the grassroots advocacy work of AAUW's membership network. Megan has more than 20 years of nonprofit policy and issue experience, developing and implementing targeted social impact strategies designed to engage key stakeholders and policymakers to advocate for positive policy outcomes. Prior to joining AAUW, Megan worked on state and local health policy with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and led efforts to expand LGBTQ equality in the Deep South with the Human Rights Campaign. She also worked for the Conservation Lands Foundation to help lead local and national campaigns in the Western United States, resulting in the successful protection of more than 5 million acres of public land. And Megan is no stranger to AAUW. She was also previously AAUW's National Field Director, supporting local advocacy engagement and volunteer Get Out the Vote efforts. Please join me in welcoming Megan back to AAUW as she shares more about our recent policy efforts and priorities for the year ahead. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you, Gloria. And I want to thank everybody for such a warm welcome back to AAUW. It's really terrific to be able to continue carrying on the strong tradition of political advocacy in support of this mission. And it's a long history of creating social change through public policy efforts, including endorsing legislation at the state and federal level, engaging the executive branches of government, and raising our voices with regard to the courts. And I'll come back to more of that. So first, as I take a few minutes to share with all of you some of the work that we're currently doing, let me speak to a success and another thank you. That in December, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act was passed in Congress, and this new law, which is one of the most significant protections for pregnant workers in decades, went into effect just this past Tuesday, and it stands to benefit nearly 2.8 million women a year who are working while pregnant. And I want to thank all of the thousands of members who took just 2 minutes to send a letter to their members of Congress to show our collective support for this important legislation. Your voice is critical as we look at the 118th Congress and the opportunities in education, women's economic security, and civil rights. This year, so far, AAUW members and activists have collectively sent more than 50,000 letters to Congress. On the education front, AAUW supported increasing maximum Pell Grant awards. Pell Grants allow more than 7 million low and middle income students, nearly 60% of Black undergrads and nearly half of Latino undergrads, to attend and complete college every year. And yet the maximum current Pell Award still covers the lowest share of costs in the program's 50-year history. We've also endorsed the Gender Equity in Education Act to combat harassment and discrimination in education programs. We've also seen several important bills to support women's economic security, which have been reintroduced, including the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would take meaningful steps to update and strengthen the Equal Pay Act of 1963, of which many of our members were in the Oval Office with President Kennedy when that was signed, but we still have a way to go. We've also seen two important paid leave bills, the Healthy Family Act and the Family Medical Insurance Leave, or Family Act, which would provide a paid FMLA program. We're also seeing on the civil rights front, we've supported the Women's Protection Act and opposed efforts to limit protections from discrimination targeting the LGBTQ community. I don't want to end talking about the Congress without sharing my excitement that after 100 years after the Equal Rights Amendment was first introduced in 1923, we've seen the first congressional caucus dedicated to affirming the Equal Rights Amendment as the 28th Amendment and establishing constitutional gender equity as a national priority. We still have a way to go on this, but the enthusiasm from members of Congress is inspiring. But as you know, this is a very divided Congress, so we've been pushing the Biden-Harris administration to do what they can to advance gender and racial equity as well. Just this month, we've submitted comments in support of a proposed rule from the Office of Personnel Management, which would address pay equity by banning the use of salary history for new federal employees. We know from our research that banning reliance on prior salary histories can really help decrease creating systemic gender wage gaps. And this can result in salary increases for women and people in historically marginalized communities. And given that the federal government is our largest employer in the country, this would have a significant impact. But sometimes we do need to hold the feet to the fire, even in a supportive administration. We've joined comments to the Department of Education to strengthen proposed rules to make student debt repayment more affordable and manageable through income-driven repayment plans. And we're also holding their feet to the fire with the Department of Education, not to drag its feet on finalizing changes to Title IX. There have been great strides over the past 50 years due to Title IX, and yet we've still yet to see the full potential of robust civil rights protections from sex discrimination in education. So we're calling on the administration to finalize their Title IX rules and make sure that they're in effect by January 2024 at the latest. But, and especially today, our overview of work in Washington, D.C. wouldn't be complete without talking about the Supreme Court. Earlier this month, I think that many of us had a sigh of relief when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of upholding Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And when it did, the justice acknowledged the very real discriminations that voters of color face across the nation. And yet, earlier today, the court moved to eliminate the consideration of race in admissions to colleges and universities. We know that affirmative action policies have been critical to ensuring racial and gender equity and providing redress for past gender, racial, and ethnic discrimination in higher education. So despite today's decision, we remain committed to ensuring that women and communities of color have equal access to quality education. There's one more day left and one more day of decisions from the Supreme Court. And in order for people to thrive after obtaining a college degree, it's imperative that women not be crushed by student debt, due in part to rising tuition costs of colleges and universities. And then we know that when women graduate, their debt repayment collides with the gender wage gap and the racial wage gap to make it harder for them to repay loans. As a result, women are putting off savings for retirement, buying homes, starting a business. I won't tell you how old I am, but Gloria's kind of alluded to. I've been around for a little bit, and I just paid off my student loans last month in May. I feel like I deserve a bit of a round of applause for it. And for all the folks who are still struggling with student debt, we have got our eyes on the Supreme Court tomorrow as they make a decision in two cases that look at President Biden's executive order late last year to extend a federal student repayment pause and to forgive $20,000 of student debt for Pell Grant recipients. Just want to keep that in context. So I do not have a crystal ball in my office. We don't know what's going to happen, so a lot more to come on that. Supreme Court will also be issuing a ruling tomorrow on the latest case seeking a right to discriminate against the LGBTQ community. More to come, and we'll see what happens there. But rather than me ending on that front note, let me turn again my thanks to all of our members for all of their work at the state level. There has been a tremendous amount of action at the state level this year. And I just want to give a particular shout out to all of the individuals who came out in person for lobby days in your state capitals this year. It was great to see Florida, Illinois, many other states actually back in person, walking the halls of state capitals, which was terrific to see. As a result, we've seen really terrific successes. In Minnesota, we've seen passage of an affirmation of the Equal Rights Amendment and a child marriage bill that is being signed, I believe, next week, if not today. In Florida, in Hawaii, let me give a shout out to one of our state public policy chairs who was at the signing ceremony for a bill that would eliminate the pay equity bill that's going to have a terrific impact for women across the state. And a thank you to all of our volunteers who step up, either whether it is online with a 2-minute activist, whether it is walking the halls of your state capital, or to our folks here in the DC region, who starting next month will be joining us again through the halls of the US Capitol as the Capitol Hill Lobby Corps comes back and will be representing all of you and our collective interest on Capitol Hill in DC. So my thanks to all of the work that is being done around the country with your voices being heard. With that, let me turn the next portion of today's program over to Melinda Gall, Vice Chair of AUW's Board of Directors and Chair of the AUW National Governance Committee.
Thank you, Megan. And thank you to everybody who is on this call today. But a huge thank you to all our members who voted in the last bylaws election. The bylaws passed overwhelmingly, and it's all because you took your time to read and pay attention and vote. AAUW is a very unique organization in that each and every one of us has a vote, and we decide the path for our organization. I want to give a special thanks to the Governance Committee Bylaws Subcommittee. This group of women, led by Sherry Sorokin and consisting of Christine Schmidt, Jeannie Latz, and Janine Greenwood, spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours reading our old bylaws and helping us to streamline and make our bylaws more efficient so we can move into the future of AAUW with best practices. So thank you to the committee and to each and every one of you that supported these bylaws. I also want to tell you a little bit about the rest of the members of the governance committee. Many of you know that we have a national staff, and we often refer to national as being just staff. But national is more than just the staff that we have in Washington, D.C. National also is the board of directors that come from all over the country. And national are the many committees that we have that have members and board members that provide support, training, policy, and procedures for this organization. The governance committee is just one of those committees. And in addition to the subcommittee that we had on bylaws, we have other members that were doing different things for the governance committee. Jan Van Gassy, Paula Tomko, Ruth Holst, Lori Janetti, Lizette Garcia, Jackie Edson, and Alana Arnold were also part of our team that were doing two main projects. One is the committee survey. We make sure that we survey our committees every year so that we can determine if we are providing services and meeting the needs of our membership and the needs of AAUW. We also started this year state liaison meetings every other month. We have board members and governance committee members and state leaders meeting together on different topics. We try to do some training, some information, and exchanging of ideas. This last set of meetings, we addressed the very important issue of looking at ourselves, looking at our branch structures, looking at our state structures, and trying to see if we can do better in our structure. We hear repeatedly how branches and states are struggling to get leadership. So in our state liaison meetings, we did an exercise to look at our branches and look at our states and see if there are some things we can streamline. And if not, maybe a way we can create a new affiliate structure. So your state leaders are still working hard on that. And any of you branch leaders that are out there would be glad to work with you on the governance committee. So what do we have in the future? Well, we have a very important bylaws vote that is going to come next year. Once again, the open membership vote will be before the membership. Our board chair, Julia, has appointed a task force, which is led by Kimberly Adams, with Lizette Garcia, Edwina Martin, Mary Zupek, and Shyla Mistry. And they will be working with all of the various committees and organizations and groups and members who are very much in favor of opening our membership. So be looking for this task force and the work they will be doing, and your vote will be needed in the spring. We also are going to continue our state liaison meetings every other month. And those of you who are new branch leaders and new state leaders who will be participating, we welcome you. And those who have participated in the last year but will be moving out of their positions, we'll miss you. But if there's anything we can do to help you in what you're doing for AAUW, we're always there. And again, our committees will be surveyed at the end of the year to make sure we're meeting the needs. I'll close with this. Again, we're an organization that's run by our members. Each and every one of you are a vital part of this organization. Today, you have heard from staff leaders that will tell you where you can help. Things like the 2-minute activists, voting in our elections, and participating in these conversations. We appreciate what you do. We appreciate you being part of AAUW, and we're here for you. The staff, the board, and the committees, we're here for you. And if you need help from us, please don't hesitate to reach out. So I think I now turn it over to Katrina.
Thank you, Melinda. As Julia mentioned earlier, I'd like to continue our expression of gratitude for your ongoing commitment to providing financial and overall membership and volunteer support to AUW. It's my greatest pleasure, in particular, to first acknowledge a group of dedicated supporters who have committed to join the Legacy Circle during the past fiscal year. The Legacy Circle is comprised of over 700 members across the country who have included AUW in their estate plans, including the designation of gifts to AUW National in their wills and establishing charitable gift annuities, among other planned giving vehicles. I'm proud to support and recognize this group today, ensuring AUW's mission lives on well into the future. Our Legacy Circle is stewarded by a group of hardworking members whom I would like to acknowledge and also thank today. Sue Barley, Lisa Cherry, Pat Dalpiaz, Charmin Goring, Claudia Gray, Judy Horan, Jackie Littleton, Kay McMurray, Kristen Moyer, and Patricia Ross. The National Legacy Circle team works tirelessly to ensure we maintain connections to our current Legacy Circle members and works closely with state and branch leaders in their regions to recruit and recognize new members each year. Please join me in thanking them for their commitment. Donors to AUW at all levels ensure we have the funds needed to deliver mission-critical programming. In particular, our Greatest Needs Fund enables AUW to respond quickly and effectively to emerging gender equity issues and supports our general operations across AUW's pillars in leadership, economic security, and education and training. This past year, our Greatest Needs Fund went towards supporting key AUW programs from our salary negotiation, financial literacy, and leadership workshops to forging national partnerships with community organizations across the country, developing impactful research and elevating AUW's position as a leader in gender equity policy and advocacy work for over 140 years. Your support breathes life into our mission. Lastly, I want to recognize the tremendous work you're doing at the state and branch level, and some of you may know that we conducted a branch and affiliate survey last fall. We were excited to receive submissions representing 259 branches across the country and 39% of our branches with over 10 members. Despite the many challenges of the past few years, you rose to the occasion again and again. For example, of those who submitted the survey, 89% of branches held mission-based programs in fiscal year 22. 67% of them engaged in fundraising activities, and 61% of branches held the same number of mission-based programs or more during the pandemic that they did before COVID. That's more than half, and we applaud your resilience and dedication. I was also heartened to see that nearly 2/3 of branches are doing their own grassroots advocacy work, and almost 45% are focusing on STEM. We hope to continue the survey on an annual basis because of the high participation of our branches and combine it with our 5-star program, which you'll hear more about this summer. It's obvious from these results that far more of you are doing that mission work than have participated in 5-star in the past, and we look forward to giving you the recognition you truly deserve. I know I've said this once before, but want to reiterate that our members truly do breathe life into our mission. This past May, I celebrated 2 years at AAUW, which I know is a drop in the bucket compared to many of our members, but I've been reflecting on all that I've learned about AAUW and our members during this time. I've learned you're passionate, committed, and have formed so many lifelong bonds with one another, all while supporting our mission and your local communities. Through a recent oral history project, we've collected over 9,000 of your stories, and we look forward to sharing a digital version of a selection of those stories next spring. We've updated the contact information of thousands of our members through this initiative, which will aid us in staying connected with you. I've also learned that our members are resilient and committed. Your commitment has helped us transition to the community hub over this past year. And while we had a rocky start, I'm pleased with the positive feedback we've received regarding the improvements made over this past year with your support. Year to date, we are up over 10% in membership renewals, and we could not have done this without you. Thank you once again for all that you do and continue to do to fight for women and girls. I'd like to now turn the program back to Julia for her closing remarks.
Thank you, Katrina. And just like that, our first member gathering of 2023 comes to a close. Thank you to our CEO, Gloria, to our board vice chair, Melinda, and to staff for keeping us updated on all that's going on with the organization, our policy direction, governance news, and membership updates. To all of my fellow AAUW members, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's with your support, your contributions, and your advocacy that AAUW remains at the forefront of securing equity and equal opportunity for women and girls. So thank you again for joining us. Enjoy your summer. Have a safe and fun July 4th, and we'll see you back in full force with fall kickoff. Bye-bye.